All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or perhaps it may even be morning when you're watching. But not my name is Shelby Long. I'm the twice exceptional mom. Today I have with me Laticia Little, and I'm very excited for her to talk to you all and share her story with her as she goes in, as she's begun her second act. As a grandparent, I really said she really look at her. She doesn't look like a grandparent. As a glam mother, because she's a
Yeah.
glamorous grandmother that is caring for her granddaughter. And she's got quite the story to tell. I think it's going to be inspirational to people who listen. Definitely a person that you can look at and say, like, if you're having challenges, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, that you can have somebody's story that you can say, look at the successes they're having, and you can lean on that. So that's what we want to keep doing. We want to keep encouraging other families with exceptional children and encouraging other exceptional moms, dads, and definitely exceptional grandmothers on their journey, and we want to make sure we're providing support as where we can, and that everyone feels seen and everyone feels heard. We are not in this alone, and we also want to continue to encourage advocacy because advocacy is an act of love. So again, my name is Shelby Long. I'm the twice exceptional mom, and today I have with me Laticia Little. So Laticia, we're gonna go ahead and talk about your glam baby. Um, grandmother. I know that you stepped up as her grandmother and you were able to get custody of her, and you said it was like a little bit of a challenge. Do you mind sharing some of it, whichever you feel comfortable sharing,
Yeah.
just to kind of make everyone aware of like how you ended up being in a position of being your granddaughter's guardian and advocate?
So the way that I ended up getting Nora, she's a very strong-willed little girl, and she was in a situation that she was very unhappy with. I had tried to get the maternal grandmother to let me take custody of her, but they wouldn't. And so she was in a situation where it was uncomfortable. She was being abused. And she took it upon herself to run away. She was about 9 years old when she decided to run away.
Which
And
is really hard for people to think about. So, people who don't have kids, like a 9-year-old, that means she's about third grade age, third, fourth
right,
grade. So
right.
very small, but but she knew even at that point she couldn't stay in the environment that she was in.
Yeah, yeah. And we were very fortunate because she hadn't gotten too far away when Centerville in Houston County, Centerville police found her and picked her up. Unfortunately, when they took her home, the folks that she was with was saying that she wasn't missing. They weren't missing a child. And so they quickly took her to juvenile justice and within a couple of hours had her in a foster placement. Just so happened that day they were in court. The court was in session. And so they moved pretty quickly. By the time we realized that she was gone, she was already placed. And so um, my journey began with fighting to get her out of foster care. And when I first went to juvenile justice, I believe there was a sheriff's department individual there. And he told me, he's like, it's going to be 3 months before you get her out of foster care. He's like, I had a nephew that was in foster care. It took me 3 months. And me being the determined person that I was, I'm like, nah, not my grandbaby.
Exactly.
And so the other challenge that we had with this scenario was the legitimization process. My son and her mother were never married, they were in high school together, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
He signed the birth certificate, but in the state of Georgia, that means nothing. I don't know how many people actually know
I
this.
know that if you have a child have a child with someone other than your spouse, that the
Yes,
spouse is considered the parent, even if another man has fathered that child in the state of
exactly.
Georgia. So yeah, that
Yeah.
definitely can complicate paternity.
Exactly. And so when they wouldn't let me speak in court, but I had already done the leg work before time for court. I had worked in defects in my younger years in the Child Protective Services, and I knew about home evaluations and what was needed for placement. So in the time that we were waiting to go back to court again, which was about 5 days, I
Wow.
was calling everybody. I called the clerk of the court. I emailed every
Everyone got to know you very well and
everybody
very
got to know
quickly.
me very well. I called DFAX and had a home visit done. I got my own background check done from the police department or the sheriff's department. And when we went to court, although I could not speak, I was not allowed to speak in the court.
Right.
DFAX had already made the determination because they did the home visit in advance that
Mm-hmm.
she would be placed with me. And I wanted her, they knew that. And so we were able to get her out of foster care in 5 days.
And I think that's just amazing that you were able to get her out like not even an entire week. And I love that you were able to fight for your granddaughter and to get her placed with you so you can make sure that she was safe and that she was secure and you could start giving her that glam motherly love
Yes.
and providing for her. And you said, and I know you said you got her when she was 9.
Mhm.
And now she's 13, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you had an interesting beginning, and now you're at a certain point. And talk to us a little bit about how you found out that Nora was exceptional.
So the first time we learned about the ADHD, because she has multiple diagnoses, she has the ADHD, the PTSD, and autism.
Mm,
The first time we found out about the ADHD during the psychological eval that DFAX did. And so I
mhm.
immediately started trying to get her services for that. But it just so happened I found a great doctor here in the area and was taking her to the doctor. And she did some things in the doctor visit that kind of, caused the doctor to question.
Ask some questions, right?
Yeah. And the doctor says, have you ever had her tested for autism? And I said, no. Well, her counselor had also suggested that maybe she was autistic. And so we got a referral from the doctor and was able to get in with Dr. Johns here in Macon.
And that's
We
hard to do. He has a
Oh,
long waiting list.
yes. Yes. I was just about to
Yes.
say it took us 8 months to get
Wow.
testing done. 8 months.
Wow.
And then there was another month before we could get the results of the testing.
Wow.
So it took a lot.
Mhm.
So, and I'll tell anybody, the counselors, they tried to do a referral, but it didn't
Mhm.
work. The best
Right.
way to get that referral is through your doctor
Through
because
the
that was when it
pediatrician.
worked. Yeah, through the
And I
pediatrician.
have a couple questions. When you went through the process with Dr. Johns, how many sessions did he have to have to complete the testing with her? Because I'm only familiar with how we do testing, on the district level, whether a parent requests it or if the child qualifies based on being moved from RTI. Tier 3 interventions aren't working. We try to move to Tier 4. So that's when we start looking at testing to see if something else is going on because the interventions aren't working. And I know they come in several different times. They make observations of them in a classroom setting. They have the parents complete some information like questionnaires. They have the teachers complete some questionnaires. But I honestly have no idea how that works on the private setting. So could you share that?
It was very similar. Prior to her evaluation with Dr. Johns they mailed us a whole packet of information that we needed to fill out. I think I filled out like 7 or 8 assessments. Yeah,
Wow.
it was a lot. It was a lot. But also the school had to fill it out. So we used her lead teacher. He did all the paperwork for that. And then we had probably about a 3-hour session with him
Wow.
where
Yeah.
he did some testing on her in the office.
Was
And then
she cooperative during testing?
she
Okay.
was. And for the most, I think I was in there for the most part. I did sit off, so I cannot say what his tests were like because I didn't,
Right, right.
interfere or anything like that. And so I was just a fly on the wall.
Got you. Got you.
Yeah.
So once you've learned of her exceptionalities, what were your next steps as a glam mother I'm gonna keep saying it, you look good.
Uh,
Uh, going into raising her and making sure she's getting the things that she needs, because education, I'm sure, looks very different now than it looked when you had, your son when he was that age. There's
Exactly.
a lot of changes, even special education, like explaining to parents that being in the program for exceptional children is different than what SPED looked like when even I was a child. I'm
Right.
42. They used to have them like kind of quarantined in their own class, and they didn't get to interact with anyone. They were kind of in their own little bubble. Whereas now they have different tiers of it. They have the kids that are inclusion, where they go in with the regular ed students and they may get pulled out with the SPED teacher. Or maybe the SPED teacher may push in and assist in the classroom, unless they have like really, really, unless they have higher needs, in which case they're considered to be in an access class, is what we call it in Georgia, where they may be in that set classroom setting with children with similar challenges, and then they'll
Right.
be in that place. But I think most children that we're seeing these days, they pretty much qualify to be in inclusion classes, depending on what behaviors and things are there. But I think parents aren't, that because that just wasn't a thing. It definitely in the 80s. I'm not even sure if it was in the 90s. I started teaching in the early 2000s, and it was like really just starting, it seems.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
even what it looked like then is different. Like I remember teaching third grade when I first started teaching in 2005, and I had a parent who had a child with Down syndrome, but was not necessarily a high functioning child with Down syndrome, to sit in with my math class because she just wanted her to be around people her age. So she would sit in my math class, but she was doing like kindergarten level work, but she
Hmm.
was in the class just so she could be around people her age. And I think now, I think they might still do some things like that, but I feel like it's a little bit more structured, I guess, is what
Right.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree. And like I told you before, we recently learned that my son is on the autism spectrum. And so my son is 34 now. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's 34. And what they had while he was in junior high school, nobody talked that you'd hear whispers of Asperger's
Right,
syndrome, but
right.
nobody ever really you didn't know
Educated.
what to do with it. You didn't know what to
Right,
do with it. Nobody talked about, go get this test or go get that test. You just
right.
know. And so now people are much more aware of its existence, and lots of work is in place. I was very fortunate, unlike some people might be. I say this all the time, very fortunate in my journey, in that I was surrounded by teachers. I had
Yes.
a school counselor. My cousin is a school counselor. I
Mhm.
get on their nerves.
You're just finding out information, you're using the resources, the people that you have as resources
I'm
to
using
get
them
what
as
you need
resources.
for your grandbaby.
Yeah,
And that's what you're supposed to do.
yeah. And I really didn't know a lot about IEPs and 504s. And one of my friends was a special ed teacher, and she's like, okay, now that you got her and you know that she's got ADHD, you get her a 504 plan and you
Right.
pushing. And
And
so,
and can I explain what a 504 plan is for people who are watching really quickly? So a 504 plan is a plan that a child can receive different accommodations based off of medical diagnosis. A child can have a 504 plan and an IEP, or a child could have a 504 plan or an IEP. It just really depends on the child and their needs. And 504 plans can vary. My daughter has one, hers is for food allergies. So it could be for food allergies, diabetes, ADHD. It's all types of things that a child could qualify for. Deaf, hard of hearing, visual impairment, all these types of things. If it's documented from a physician, it can qualify a child for a 504 plan. But again, a 504 plan does a child with a 504 plan may also have an IEP, an individualized education plan, or they may not. They might not have one. It may just specifically be based primarily off of a medical diagnosis.
exactly. And so we were able to get that put in place. The elementary school here was very, very, very helpful. I mean, I got her in the middle of the school year, so I took custody of her in March. So they
Right.
were already very well through the school year.
Hmm.
And so the principal was a godsend. I mean, this lady would call me while she was sitting in the beautician's chair. And she's like, I know
Mm-hmm.
it's 7 o'clock, Miss Little, but I wanted to talk to you about this. The
Mm-hmm.
counselors, I had them on speed dial, the resource coordinator, I had
Yeah,
her.
your village. You had
Yeah,
your
they were a
village.
village in elementary school. And so we were able to get the 504 in place without too much of a fight. And I recognize that some people will have to fight for it, right?
Right.
Um, because her diagnosis came from defects, we had to go through multiple iterations of getting people to evaluate her. And this
Right.
is why we started out with a 504, not an IEP,
IEP.
because they wanted the school psychologist to evaluate her for the IEP.
IEP.
Amazingly enough, the school psychologist did not pick up on the autism.
Mm,
Oh, but she
that's
did.
interesting.
But
Mm,
it did lead to us putting the IEP in place before she got, because it was pivotal that we got it in place before
right.
she went to middle school. And so we got her IEP in place in 5th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
is she, because she's older, is she aware of like her accommodations and, the things that are supposed to happen, like in terms of her number of breaks or, how much time she's supposed to receive to take assessments and those types of things?
I think she has a level of awareness. She does not take advantage of it as much as she needs to. So we're constantly reminding her. Like we had an incident today, and I had to get on to her and said, look, you have the ability to raise that pass and say,
Yep.
I need to go get my lifeline, because we have identified people as lifelines in the school.
So like a check-in, check-out person with her. So when she's getting overwhelmed in the classroom, she can go with an adult that she's comfortable and familiar with to kind of recalibrate her and then kind of go back into the regular ed classroom with her peers.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. But she did not do that, and it ended up going real bad.
Right, right.
So I'm continuously stressing to her, you have these accommodations, use them, because we know that you can't. Her autism, she doesn't have any issues with the educational component. It is the behavioral component,
It's social,
social and
emotional.
behavioral. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so regulating herself when a situation has gotten out of control is very difficult for her.
Right,
And it's like there are gonna be situations that are gonna push her. And I've told the teachers, I'm like, when she tells you she got a problem, please deal with it.
right.
And this go round, substitutes come into play.
Yeah,
And they
we
don't
just
get
had that
the IEP.
conversation.
Yeah, they don't
Before
get
we press
the
record, we had that
IEP.
conversation
I
because they
wish,
really need a familiar adult when
yeah.
they're ADHD and ASD. They need that familiarity, especially with the autism, because so much of autism they need consistency. If you want to see a child with autism act a whole fool, change their schedule,
Oh
even if
my
it's
God.
something small. One of
Yes.
our family friends, went to high school and junior high together. He's a principal now of a high school, and he told me this story of one of their kids who I think was in the ninth grade academy that he was over at the time, and this child had autism, and part of his plan was they were supposed to tell him when there was a fire drill. They did not tell this child. My friend said he came back to his office and he said that boy was already sitting there waiting for him. Said, you did not tell me we were having a fire drill today. You were supposed to tell me. And he said he couldn't even argue with him. He was like, you know
Exactly.
what? I messed up, you know,
Exactly.
because that will throw them. It seems so small, but
Oh
that
my
will throw
gosh.
them off for the entire day. And then
Yeah.
add in the potential because a lot of times children with ASD have sensory issues. So think about how loud a fire drill is
Right.
and the intensity of all the people in the hall rushing past you and everything like that. And
Yeah.
he wasn't able to filter that out.
Yeah.
So my friend got a mouthful.
Yeah, that change disorder, this disruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a big change, right? The fire
It
alarm.
is.
But in my home, and I'll never forget this because it caused Nora to have a meltdown. I changed my hair. I work
Oh,
from home,
wow.
so I'm often in a ponytail, but this day
Right.
I decided to do something to my hair because I was going somewhere. I changed my purse, which I do frequently,
You did too much. She said you were doing too much.
and I moved the trash can. She had a complete meltdown that lasted for
Um,
an hour.
wow.
Nobody will believe. I would have never dreamed that those little insignificant changes.
Right. Would cause such dysregulation for her.
Yeah,
Right.
she lost it. And so I had to put the trash can back where it was. I
Right.
wouldn't give up my purses and my hair. I'm like, okay,
Right.
I need,
Right.
no, I'm going to change my hair. But I did put the trash can back where it was when she came.
Right. I want to say something about that incident because I think it's really important for people to know and understand, which I don't think a lot of people do, is that when we as parents of exceptional children are advocating for our children as students and we're asking for certain things to be put in place, we are asking for them because we know our children
Exactly.
and we know and the behaviors that they see at school, they also happen at home.
That's
It
right.
happens at home. I will say, I think that's the biggest difference between an exceptional, a parent of an exceptional child than a parent of a regular ed child. And this is me speaking
Yeah.
as a parent and an educator. You could have a child do something in a regular ed classroom. They could, let's say they told a lie or they hit somebody. And some of these parents will 10 toes down. My child didn't do that. My child didn't do
Right.
that. You
Right.
talk to a parent of an exceptional child. Like for me, my example, like you and I talked about my child being a runner and a track star. He likes to go in time
Yeah.
for the car. He's an
Mhm.
eloper. You know, they never taught, they didn't bring it up to me at the
Yeah.
school. I asked them, I said, so is he an eloper? Does he run? You know, and then it was like people kind of exchanging glances, like, yeah, he has.
Yeah.
And we've put things in place because of that. But if imagine if I hadn't asked that question, but I knew he was running because he would do it here. We have,
Exactly.
we have special locks and alarms and all types of things because that's what he does here. And I need people to understand that. We understand that sometimes our children's behaviors can be frustrating, perhaps even off-putting at times, but these are the children that God gifted us with.
That's right.
And
That's
as my former principal, Ms. Walsetta Miller, would always say, she said, parents are sending the best children they have to school.
that's
And
right.
we are sending our very best children. These are the children that we have.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, the difference between a regular ed parent and a parent of a child who's in a program for exceptional children is we see it at home. I don't think most of us make excuses for it. We know what it is. We just try to see what we can do to maintain safety and continue the learning. And that's
Yeah.
the goal, maintain safety and continue the learning. And
Yeah.
so I hope that the as she's building her relationship with people in the middle school and everything, I'm hopeful that people are giving her an opportunity to get to know her because a lot of times people look at I don't people don't aren't able to separate behavior from the person.
Exactly.
And you could have a behavior that you might not be able to self-regulate at this time, but that does not mean that you may like, for example, like when they get angry, if something is off of the routine or the schedule or something like that, and to them, and it's a very big emotional reaction to something like that. Just because that child was angry in that moment does not mean that's an angry child.
That's one of the things that I had to check the schools on because they had in her record that she was violent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and I was having a meeting with them, and I had to get on a couple counselors. I did
Right.
because of their language. You know,
You
one
have
of
to
the
separate the
counselors.
child from the behavior. You
That's
can't
right.
say you're this. You can say this behavior
Exactly.
was noted or
Exactly.
observed, but we've got to be very careful about how we name children.
That's right.
Words have power and we
Yes.
want to
Yeah.
encourage them and we want to also let them feel like they have an ability to change. But if you say that's who they are,
Yes.
opposed to a behavior that they're displaying,
Yeah.
that makes it difficult for them to make that mindset shift.
Yeah, they had to laugh at me because when the counselor said, "Oh, Nora's violent. She's a violent person." I said, "No, Nora's not violent." I said, "Number one, she's reactionary." I said, "Now she hasn't picked a fight with anybody in the school yet. She's not started
A
anything.
single thing.
But when you push her in the corner, she's gonna
That's what's gonna
finish
come
it.
out.
You know,
Right.
she's gonna
Mhm.
finish it. So she is reactionary. She's not violent. And we're not gonna use that word anymore because it would hurt her deeply. Because she's at her core, she's an extremely caring and she's won awards for empathy. You know, she is a justice fighter. She's gonna stand up for the little kid.
And I
You
think that's a big part too of, first of all, with children with autism, they do have a very deep sense of justice and fairness. And I think, and then you add in what you shared earlier about her background, again, getting to know children and where they come from. You know, if a child has come from a situation where they were being abused, and then they feel like they're getting that same type of pressure of someone's coming at me, so
yeah,
I feel unsafe, you know, a reaction should be expected at a certain
yeah,
point. And you cannot change someone's past. But what we can do though is try to get them the tools to help them adjust so they can change their present and their future. And
right.
I think that is a big piece that's missing, is just like understanding, taking the time to understand someone's story and understand their background so you can have a different approach. And I'm not saying to use incidents that occur as an excuse for a behavior, but I'm just saying recognize that that might be what's the spark before, you know, there's an
Yeah,
explosion. And that,
exactly.
you know, and maybe helping them address some of those things so they're not put in those situations where I'm feeling attacked, I'm feeling like someone's in my space, that I'm going to get harmed, because that's a lot to ask a child to process and to go through. It's a lot for adults. I know
It
adults
is.
who are
Yeah,
abused as children and they still carry, you know, they still react to things because it triggers things, it triggers those thoughts and it makes them feel like they're in a helpless situation. And
exactly.
then they lash out.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
for a child to do that, that's not, you know, really unheard of.
Right. And truth be told, any child can get overwhelmed. Any child,
Adults can get overwhelmed.
adults get overwhelmed. And we're not always on our best behavior when we're in a state of overwhelm. But
Right.
when you talk about a dysregulation in their neural processing, right, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't allow them to have those calming abilities that we can do, it's the self-soothing stuff that we can do. It's a whole nother level. It's a whole nother level.
Yeah. Well, I know I want to get a little bit too into um about Georgia kinship a little bit,
Ah,
because I think this kind of can be like a good segue, because you're doing all these things as an advocate and as her guardian. And you know, I would like for other grandparents at home and parents to know, if they end up with a child that's related to them and they end up in a situation where they're fostering or adopting them, what is in place and what isn't in
right.
place for them moving forward.
Yeah. It's really interesting in the state of Georgia, whether you are being placed with a child from foster care or, you know, how the courts are placing the child with you. Grandparents, aunties, you know, other relatives are not considered traditional foster parents. We're in a unique little corner there where we
Mhm.
are foster parents because we don't have soul, we're not
But
grand,
you're still biologically related.
but you're still biologically related. And because you're biologically related in the state of Georgia, you get none of the benefits that a
So
foster,
no financial assistance, like where
no
people get
financial,
the monthly checks and different things
no,
to help with the kids. You didn't get that, and you don't
yeah,
get that.
I don't get that. Nothing.
So a second stage of life where you've raised your child and now you're raising your child's child.
Hmm.
And you should be really close to dipping that toe into retirement, even though, like I said, you look fine, you Glam-Mother, don't look like you should be retired, but you should be dipping your toe into that retirement, that relaxing phase of your life. You're not only not able to do that, you're also having to take on additional financial burdens that you were not prepared for.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, Georgia Kinship, one of the things I love about them is they're continually lobbying to
Mm-hmm.
try and get more support for kinship placements, but there's just not. Prime example, when she was placed with me, I was contacted by this program that would have been wonderful. They would have
Mm-hmm.
helped me find resources. They would have given me money to get her in activities and things like
Right.
to help make her transition easier. When they found out that I was a kinship placement, that was no
Pull
longer
the
it.
rug right from under you.
Yes, it hurt my feelings so bad because they offered it to me, and so now I'm excited because it's supposed to be
Right.
coming. And no, no summer school program, because they would have paid for
No
the summer
transition
school program.
camp, none of
No,
that.
none of that. So everything came out of my pocket, and I go back to saying that I'm blessed in that I had a job that was pretty good and I make a good living. But through the program, I've met grandparents who were older than me, who were retired, and they're taking
Yeah.
on two and three kids with no financial assistance.
And it is crazy that the way our system is set up, they're more willing to financially assist a person that has
No
no
connection.
no biological connection, and so doesn't have that familial feeling with that child to want that child to succeed and grow and do well. And instead they're more so, they're going to give a stranger those benefits.
Exactly.
And the thing of it is, I think about society, and I think about the long-term ramifications of saying that, because I think about, like you said, some of these other family members may want them and they can't financially do it. So they can't,
Exactly.
so then they're going to end up being raised by strangers and being disconnected. And then, that can lead to other issues as an adult. And you would think there would be, if anything, you would think there would be more financial benefits
Exactly.
for a family member to step up and say, we don't want our family member to be a ward of the state. We don't want them to have to be with a stranger. We just need supports because this was unanticipated.
Exactly.
And I think it's another thing about educating people. And I hope that their lobbying efforts, come through, because I'm sure, there are some grandmothers that are much older than you and that
Yeah.
cannot really work a lot. Or if they are getting some type of government assistance, it's not enough to cover them plus X number of children, you
Exactly.
know? It's a
Especially
lot.
when you have multiple children that you're taking. And we
Right.
we know to be with family is in the best interest of the child. Because the one thing about it is me being a part of her family. I know her mother, and my son is, again, I'm the paternal grandmother, but I can make visits with her. I can communicate with her,
Mhm.
and
So
help
they
her
can have some type of relationship,
so
even
that they
as
have
opposed
some
to
type
no
of.
relationship.
Exactly.
Right.
Because in spite of whatever challenges, the child still loves her mom. I'm like, I
Yeah.
used to work in a drug rehab clinic, and the children, no matter how big of a crack addict their mother was or
They
what drug,
wanted to be with
they
them.
wanted to be with their mother.
It's
Yeah,
just innate. It's just innate for them to want that closeness, even if that person is not necessarily like the healthiest person to raise them. That's
yeah,
just the natural inkling to want to
yeah.
be with the person you've grown with for 9+
That's it.
months,
That's it. And we've been able to repurpose her relationship with her mother. It's
I
like
like how you said repurpose. I mean, seriously, I think that's a really good way of putting it, because you are, for all intents and purposes, you're filling in a gap. You are mother. You're doing the job
exactly.
of a mother.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that she's able to do with her biological mom with you
Yeah.
standing in the gap?
Well, what I've said to her to try and keep her from having that anger and hostility that her mom can't fulfill the
That
role of.
resentment.
Yeah, that resentment. I've told her to look at her like a big sister.
That's really good.
Yeah. And so in looking at her like a big sister, she doesn't put the responsibility and the accountability on her mom, who has her own set of issues. She's probably
Right.
too, and got some other things going on. And she can just go and laugh and joke with her big
Mhm.
sister
So they're
mom.
having a friendship. They're growing
They
a
have a
friendship.
friendship. They do nails together. They do gossiping together.
Oh, goodness.
Something that I from time to time I have a lot on my plate, right? So
Right.
I get the hard part. I get to be
Mhm.
mom, and she gets to be that fun person that we can sit and do those type things with. So
But that at the end, again, that's another one of those, changes or sacrifice that you're making to help, your granddaughter become more adjusted and to provide that consistency, and that stability that she needs along the way. I know we've talked about a lot of different things that we, discussed a little bit yesterday, but I would like, if you're willing, for you to share that grieving process we talked
yeah,
about grieving, the empty nest syndrome and how you had to, um, I guess, pivot from
yeah.
there. And you can share that because I feel like you have so much you can give to like other grandparents who end up in this situation so that they could get through the same thing because it's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. Um, truth, my son had left the house. I'd been by myself for 10 years when this happened. He had been living on his own for 10 years. And I had a life. I was very happy in my life. I
Hmm.
I had a job, but I also had started a passion business,
Hmm.
and my passion business was growing and by leaps and bounds. We had got a building, and I
Hmm.
was it took a lot. It was a lot of my focus put on that, and trying to balance work. And then I have, of course, had a social life, right?
Right.
When she came into my life, all those things had to change. And one of the hardest things was letting go of the level that I was operating on in my business.
Right.
When I lost the building, it was hard. I think I was unhappy for about 6 months. And you go through the grieving of all the changes that are happening
Yes.
in life. Now I gotta ask for a babysitter. Now I gotta come straight home
Right.
for what I'm doing. Now, if she and her having these sensory issues and these emotions and stuff, there were times where I wanted to go somewhere, but I
And you
couldn't
couldn't.
because she's having a meltdown.
Hmm.
We're dressed to leave the house and I'm pushing. I had to
Right.
get out of the habit of I had to allot more time to get out of the house
Right. So you had to
because
get
I
up earlier and start things earlier
yes,
to anticipate what could potentially happen.
right, because there were so many things I missed because I didn't allot enough time for her to process, or
Hmm.
she just didn't feel like going that day, and so I ended up having a little anger and resentment. It was like, I miss my life.
Right. But I
Yeah,
think it's so important that you're able to articulate that and to say that because, as women, especially as Black women, we're kind of conditioned to push a lot of these feelings and emotions down, but we're kind of like the embodiment of that. What is it? Stay strong and carry on. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like, we just keep going on and on. And after a while that pops up in other areas of your
it
life
does, it does.
and your body might start failing you, you might not yourself feel as emotionally regulated because you're sacrificing everything for everyone else while you're giving this facade of keep calm and carry on. You're not really calm inside you're freaking
Exactly.
out, and
Yeah.
rightfully so.
Yeah. And what happens is the children are very sensitive. We're talking about sensitive children in the first place. They're exceptional children.
Yes.
So they are exceptionally sensitive.
Mhm.
And when you have that hostility in you, they're
They
able to
feel
pick up
that.
They
They
feel,
they're very empathetic,
yes.
very empathetic.
And so you have to make sure it's not their fault, right? And so you have to let it go because they don't know it's not their fault. They don't know, and so I got counseling. I went into counseling to help me process all that I was feeling, all that I felt like I was losing, and how to restructure my life.
Yes,
The life I had was gone. It was gone. And so, okay, this is the life I got. Let me figure out how to
right,
deal with it. Because I would never have wanted anybody else to have. I've been trying to
right,
get it for a long time, you
right,
know, but I also didn't want to make her feel worse
right.
by
Because
not
she can't
healing
help her
her,
circumstance. She can't help that's what happened.
not her circumstance,
Yeah,
and so it was a journey. I had to grieve a lot of things. I had to make peace with what life was now. And amazingly enough, getting used to having a little girl, it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
I used to get my hugs from a business and the things that I
yeah,
was accomplishing. Now I got a little girl to hug me and do all this.
yeah.
Now the tough part is the little girl talked me into getting a dog, and that's just like, oh, that's a whole nother level of
You
it.
know I'm a dog lover. You know I've got a poodle. I had to keep a dog. I'm probably one of those old ladies that will probably I kill over with a dog beside me.
Look, I didn't want my child was gone. I didn't want no dog. I didn't want no fish. I didn't,
Uh-huh. But you getting all the things you didn't want. You're getting get the love from these
yes,
things
yes,
that you weren't
exactly.
expecting also. So you're getting it's not just wrought with challenges, they're high
There's love.
point.
Yeah.
Um, can you, and speaking of, can you say maybe one or two things that you feel like were your highlights of having Nora in your life as, not just your granddaughter, because you are her guardian. What's like one of the high points or proudest moments that you've had of her that you're like,
Mhm.
this is, that moment that keeps you going, that makes you say, I can do this. I'm
Yeah.
able, God's
Yeah.
able, we can get through this.
There are so many. There are so many. I sent you one of the pictures and I told you she had her little emotional support stuffed
Uh-huh.
animal.
Yeah.
She took that stuffed animal with her to school. That was a part of her 504 plan,
Wow.
that she could take that with her everywhere because,
Stability,
yes, the bill.
consistency, comfort.
Uh-huh. When and if she called it puppy. If she lost puppy, it was going to be real bad. Nobody was
Mm-hmm.
in peace. We've been digging in the dirt for puppy, okay?
Right.
When puppy disappeared
Oh my Lord.
and she no longer cried about it, she didn't even think about it.
Wow.
It blew it was deep. It was deep.
Because she was feeling safe and secure
She
without it.
was feeling safe.
Because you provided that safety and that security
Yeah,
and that consistency.
yeah, yeah. And so as I was looking through the pictures, I'm like, we truly have come a long way. Another moment that I was very proud of was when Nora did not go to school most of the time that she was with her other family.
Mm-hmm.
And so at probably 7, we came to the realization that she really couldn't read all that well.
Mm-hmm.
She is a determined little girl. Let me just tell you this. She saw my niece reading and she wanted to read. And so she started teaching herself how to read, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nora took the Beacon, whatever test they took,
Uh-huh.
or what
Yeah.
test they took, but she scored exceptional
So
in,
that's above proficient for those of you at home. So it's like, again, teacher and me, one is does not meet the standard. Two is developing, meaning you're working towards grade level standards. Three is proficient and four is above and beyond. And that's where Miss Nora was,
yes,
which is
ma'am.
amazing in ELA,
Yes.
English Language Arts.
In ELA, that's right. And so I was so proud of her. And then she came home and she told me she was reading on a 12th grade level.
Wow. And again, she's only in sixth grade. So
In
she
sixth grade.
went from being a non-reader to being an exceptional reader. And I
Yes.
think again, that goes back to just again, twice exceptionality. It's just I can't get over the concept of it. That's why I named my business the Twice Exceptional Mom, because it there is so much giftedness
Yeah.
within these children with ADHD and autism and a lot of these other conditions that are so frequently overlooked. But they have such strength
Yes.
inside in different areas, and we have to make sure that we're not just focusing on a perceived difference or weakness, but we're
Right.
also focusing on their strengths, and we're making sure that people around our children understand that different does not necessarily mean deficient, and they
Exactly.
need to know that. And I think that's just like the one of the best examples of proving that. And
Yeah.
I want to commend you again for being that person and for stepping up. And, we could go on and on about all the things that happen in your life that set you up for such a time as this.
Right.
And you do it so well. You have
Thank you.
so much compassion and grace, and your life is a testimony. You're a spiritual leader, and you don't just talk it, you're walking it,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people can see it in your life. And I think that it's important for other parents and grandparents to see that yes, there may be losses, yes, there may be disappointments, but there is also joy to be found.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
these moments that you wouldn't have otherwise that you're getting, and you can see a change. And that's why this is part of that, like I said, how it started, how it's going
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
my series. That's what it is, because it started one way and the story isn't over, but look at how
Right.
it's going and how beautifully everything is unfolding. It's not everything that you want it to be. There's still challenges, there's still things to work
Yeah.
through, but it's a vast improvement. And you've got a little girl,
Yeah.
and you're making a change, and you learning what it's like to be a girl mom.
Yes.
And it's very different from being
It
a
is
boy
very
mom,
different
because
from,
I'm a girl mom and a boy mom, and it's wild up in here sometimes.
yes, ma'am.
Mhm. Yes, indeed. Wow. Well, Letitia, I just have to say, I am so grateful that you took time out of your day and that you felt comfortable enough with me and to sit with me and to share your story and to help other families and other parents so we can continue to build community and continue to let people know they're not alone.
No.
And that within our exceptional children, there is a wide array of possibilities, and we don't need to be, bogged down by what's seemingly negative, and that there are positive things that we can lean into, and that also owning the fact that we're all real tired. Exceptional parents are real tired
Exactly.
because the behaviors don't stop.
They don't.
And
They don't.
so it's always refreshing to be with another exceptional parent with exceptional children and reminding each other, as Rob and I discussed, keeping your foot on the gas and not easing off, because we want to make sure that they're succeeding and they're doing well. But because it's a tiresome thing, there's no rest for the weary.
There
We
is
keep
not.
going. And I feel like when we have these moments, we're able to like, fill each other's buckets, give each other
Yeah.
a little bit of strength to move forward, a positivity to move forward, because I can see in you where I could be headed. I can see in you like, okay, my child may not be regulating right now, but we can get to a certain place where
Right.
he is regulating differently, and that many changes can occur in a 4-year period.
Yes. Yeah. Very true. I look at her now, and there's so many ways that I see her coming into herself. And it is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to see her getting her confidence and getting her determination and
Yes.
talking about what she wants to do for the future. It is a beautiful thing. She says she
She
wants to
sees
be
a future with you. She sees the
yeah.
future.
Oh, we were joking the other day. I always with her about when I get old. And she tells me all the time she's gonna put me in a nursing home.
Oh, she's
I'm
not.
like, you are not gonna put me in a nursing home. You gonna take care of me.
That's right. That's right.
She was cracking up. I said, I'm gonna hire somebody to chase you around and take care of me. She like,
Uh-huh.
hire somebody. You need them to take care. No, you go take care of
Yeah,
me.
exactly. Exactly. Tell her you need your reparations.
I know that's right.
She gotta, replace the years. She gotta do something for you.
I tell you the truth.
Goodness gracious. Well, Letitia, I appreciate you. I'm so grateful for you, and I know that you're going to bless somebody with your testimony, and we can't wait to hear more of the positive news about Nora, about you, about her life, because there's nowhere to go but up at this point.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.